Are you ready to enlarge your territory? Empire Transport is ready, willing, and able to cover all your transportation needs, both long haul and local. We service South Carolina, throughout the southeastern United States, and across the country. Sound good? In addition to freight hauling, Empire Transport also offers a 24/7 taxi service in South Carolina and the greater Charlotte area, and a mobile mechanic service where we come to you. Empire Transport, your go-to for freight hauls, taxi service, and mobile mechanic work. Learn more at empiretransport.co. Come and enlarge your territory with us. Welcome to Kingdom Now, the podcast featuring faith with an edge, as we celebrate the kingdom of God within you. I'm your host, Dr. Leanne Marino, apostle, author, and theologian, and founder of Spitfire Apostolic Ministries and all the works that go along with it. I'm excited to share this program with you as we explore the ins and outs of counterculture Christianity present as you live out the kingdom of God in your everyday life. Want to learn more? Visit my website at kingdompowernow.org. And now, our program, which features a variety of formats here just for you. Interviews, teaching and preaching proclaimed everywhere from my North Carolina studio to Sanctuary and beyond. And powerful insights here for now as we turn the world upside down everywhere we go. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, happy whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. And to our listeners in Romania, we say Bună. We hope that whatever time of day it is when you are listening, that you are having a good one. And I welcome you to this edition of the Kingdom Now podcast. And I am your host, Apostle Dr. Leanne Marino, here as the Spitfire, serving as the voice of counterculture Christianity, where we feature the theme of faith with an edge. And if you'd like to learn more about the world of counterculture Christianity, feel free to visit my website at kingdompowernow.org. Ever been asked what's your sign? Whether you're dating, on social media, or interacting with others, one of the first questions many ask is, what's your sign? We know when asked, someone's curious about our zodiac sign. For some, asking what's your sign is a fun getting to know you game. Others put entire stock in their sign and those of others, using such to determine compatibility, personality traits, and the upcoming events of their lives through horoscopes. For something oft spoke of in many different contexts, what is the zodiac and how does it relate to other aspects of people's personalities, social lives, and beyond? Can your birth date and the sign that accompanies it really determine your personality, relationship success, and future? This episode did come by listener request. Actually, it was requested as a sermon, but I said it would be better as a podcast because of the subject matter and the way I can dive more deeply into its contents so we can all learn more about this common aspect of the social lives of many people today. So let's explore the zodiac, something we all know of but don't know about, and see how this thing that we all speak of in casual conversation came to be. So what is the zodiac? The zodiac is, in astronomy and astrology, a belt around the heavens extending 9 degrees on either side of the plane of the Earth's orbit and the sun's annual path. So the orbits of the moon and the principal planets, which we will discuss those shortly, also lie within the zodiac. So let's stop for a minute and define a couple of the terms mentioned above that are important. Astronomy is the science that encompasses the study of all the extraterrestrial objects. Now, I know we often think extraterrestrial means an alien or like someone or some being from another planet, but extraterrestrial means anything outside of Earth. So it does relate to planets and it does relate to different planetary bodies and stars and things of that nature, as well as the context that most people colloquially use it to describe it as a being. And other phenomena, so anything that happens outside of Earth, that happens in the realm of space, or that happens in the expanse that we know as space. So astronomy studies the different things in the universe outside of planet Earth. Now, it's important to say that until the 17th century, which coincided with the invention of the telescope and the discovery of the laws of motion and gravity, most of astronomy's study was through observation, predicting the positions of the sun, moon, and planets for things such as calendar dating and navigation. And yes, this is important to what we speak, even though astronomy has expanded considerably in study. It was for millennia based on what one could calculate and recognize by what they could observe with the naked eye. So, while some of this stuff may sound odd or dismissive, what they came up with what seemed logical to them at the time. Then there's astrology, which is more of what we're going to look at for this podcast, which is different from astronomy. Astrology combines a number of different divination practices together, by which the position of different stars and planets are used to foretell the future, determine personalities, and discern human affairs, such as relationship successes, marriage partners, and the like. We will come back to astrology in a bit, but these are the two major groups, one that's scientific and one that's not, that study the zodiac, but they both study them for different reasons. And I say them because there is actually more than one zodiac chart. So far, this is simple enough, right? Basically, the zodiac refers to a group of stars. The word zodiac is from the ancient Greek word that means cycle or circle of little animals. It's a reference to the beings present in the zodiac that are often animal or relate to animals or are a combination of animal and human. Most generally assume the system of astrology started with the Babylonians in around 1800 BC, but they weren't the first to make or note different observations about the stars and other celestial bodies. There's evidence the Egyptians referenced groups of stars in hieroglyphics found on Seti I's tomb in the 14th century BC, and again in the temple of Ramses II. The Babylonians were the first to divide the zodiac into 12 equal signs, 12 months, 30 days each, offering the first celestial coordinate system, as each sign contained 30 degrees of celestial longitude, and the degrees is a reference to measurement. It's not temperature. The zodiac was fixed in relation to the stars. Now, this varies from modern astrology. It didn't consider equinoxes or the position of the sun, which does become relevant in modern astrological understanding. So, given the system was into 30-degree equal arcs, they constituted a systematic reference to make predictions about a planet's longitude, so where it would basically be longitudinally. The position of planets was given in respect to the zodiac sign by itself, but the daily position of the planets weren't as important as the days when a planet crossed from one zodiac to the next. As I said earlier, there's actually more than one zodiac group. There isn't just one. As we discovered with the mention of a new sign discovered by the Babylonians thousands of years ago, but for whatever reason not included in the system, and it actually isn't a zodiac sign, which we'll talk about later. It's just a constellation, but they would not have included that either way because it would have thrown off the equal distribution. So yes, there's Babylonian astrology, which we admittedly don't know a whole lot about. We only have fragments, mostly in astronomical diaries, records, and other things that we have records of that have been found on clay tablets. So truth be told, there's more we don't know than we do know. From what we do know, the Babylonians were what we would consider to be superstitious, and they believed in omens. They believed in the idea that the gods relayed messages through specific signs, And because humans couldn't intervene in any signs present through the planets, they were seen as more powerful than maybe something that might have involved human intervention. So, like, for example, if somebody wanted to read tea leaves, that's open to the interpretation of the individual who's doing it. Now, astrology does still have that component because somebody can't stick their finger in the planets and mix them up like they can with tea leaves. It was seen as something that was more powerful and connecting to the gods than in terms of something that might be able to be tampered with. Then there was the Greek zodiac. It's generally understood that the Greek zodiac was drawn from the Babylonians and other Mesopotamians who were also influenced by Babylon's first observations. From the ancient Greeks, we find the introduction of what's known as the 7 classical planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and the Sun and the Moon. The Greeks named the planets after their own deities, so Hermes, Aphrodite, Ares, Zeus, and Kronos. These are the planets that are visible to the naked eye. And remember that because they didn't have the technology back then to explore beyond what they could see, they did with what they could see. This matters because there are other planets that do exist, but because they couldn't see them, they didn't consider them in the concept of positioning or relevance of the different predictions that they made. From the influence of the Greek zodiac, we have others, including the Hindu zodiac, which it is believed most likely was influenced by the Greek zodiac. Now, the Hindu zodiac does use a different system that makes reference to fixed stars. It is similar to the tropical zodiac, which is Mesopotamian in nature, and is used to support certain Vedic rituals within the religion, such as to calculate certain dates for when to perform those rituals. So it had a little bit of a different purpose than the Greek zodiac or the Mesopotamian zodiac. Now, it is still used to determine things sometimes like marriage compatibility, for example, between people of 2 different signs, but its purpose was more calendar than necessarily always making predictions about people's futures. There's also the Chinese zodiac, which seems to date from somewhere between the 1st and 2nd millennium BC, which is based on that specific language usage and terminology that was popular back then. It's similar to the Western zodiac, although the beings are all animals, rather than the animals morph with people like we do see in some instances. And the Chinese zodiac, which is found throughout the Far East but is believed to have originated in China, believes the animals of the zodiac influence people's personalities, careers, compatibility, marriage, and fortune. And it's seen more as a harmonious thing rather than something that's exclusive to foretelling. So much of Eastern theory, much of Eastern theology and Eastern philosophy are about trying to achieve balance. And so the Chinese zodiac kind of has that same vibe to it. The year begins with the rat, and each year has specific signs associated with it. For example, I was born at the end of 1981, which means I was born under the sign of the rooster in Chinese astrology. For the sake of this episode, we aren't going to delve too much into Chinese astrology because it's not the zodiac system used for horoscopes and such, which is more related to what we're going to be examining here. So the zodiac and divination. So I'm going to say up front that yes, the Babylonian zodiac is reflected in the Hebrew Bible. Let's just kind of get that out of the way up front. Because the Hebrews encountered Egypt, Greece, and most relevantly Babylon, they also encountered their zodiac because it was part of both the study of the skies, especially in a primitive sense, and the way that they understood seasons. For example, some interpret the creatures of Ezekiel 1:10, which reads, Their faces looked like this. Each of the four had the face of a human being, and on the right side, each had the face of a lion, and on the left, the face of an ox. Each also had the face of an eagle as the middle signs of the four quarters of the zodiac. So the lion would be a reference to Leo, the bull Taurus, man Aquarius, and the eagle would be a reference to Scorpio. Some also believe the 12 tribes of Israel are parallel in signs to the Hebrew calendar, with 12 lunar months in a lunar year. So that would also be a zodiac reference. The arrangement of the tribes around the tabernacle, which is found in the book of Numbers. And so let's read Numbers chapter 2, and I am reading from the New International Version for anybody who's curious. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "The Israelites are to camp around the tent of meeting, some distance from it, each of them under their standard and holding the banners of their family. On the east, toward the sunrise, the divisions of the camp of Judah are to encamp under their standard. The leader of the people of Judah is Nahshon, son of Amminadab. His division numbers 74,600. The tribe of Issachar will camp next to them. The leader of the people of Issachar is Nathaniel, son of Zuar. His division numbers 54,400. The tribe of Zebulun will be next. The leader of the people of Zebulun is Eliabab, son of Helon. His division numbers 57,400. All of the men assigned to the camp of Judah, according to their divisions, number 186,400. They will set out first. On the south will be the divisions of the camp of Reuben under their standard. The leader of the people of Reuben is Eliezer, son of Shedeur. His division numbers 46,500. The tribe of Simeon will camp next to them. The leader of the people of Simeon is Shelumiel, son of Zurishadai. His division numbers 59,300. The tribe of Gad will be next. The leader of the people of Gad is Eliasaph, son of Deuel. His division numbers 45,650. All the men assigned to the camp of Reuben, according to their divisions, number 151,450. They will set out second. Then the tent of meeting and the camp of the Levites will set out in the middle of the camps. They will set out in the same order as they encamp, each in their own place under their standard. On the west will be the divisions of the camp of Ephraim under their standard. The leader of the people of Ephraim is Elishama, son of Amminadab. His division numbers 40,500. The tribe of Manasseh will be next to them. The leader of the people of Manasseh is Gamaliel, son of Pidzahar. His division numbers 32,200. The tribe of Benjamin will be next. The leader of the people of Benjamin is Abidan, son of Gideoni. His division numbers 35,400. All the men assigned to the camp of Ephraim according to their divisions number 108,100. They will set out third. On the north will be the divisions of the camp of Dan under their standard. The leader of the people of Dan is Ahizer, son of Ammishaddai. His division numbers 62,700. The tribe of Asher will camp next to them. The leader of the people of Asher is Pagiel, son of Ochran. His division numbers 41,500. The tribe of Naphtali will be next. The leader of the people of Naphtali is Ahira, son of Enan. His division numbers 53,400. All the men assigned to the camp of Dan number 157,600. They will set out last under their standards. These are the Israelites counted according to their families. All the men in the camps by their divisions number 603,550. The Levites, however, were not counted among with the other Israelites as the Lord commanded Moses. So the Israelites did everything the Lord commanded Moses. That is the way they encamped under their standards, and that is the way they set out, each of them with their clan and family. So basically the tabernacle would kind of be analogous to the central planet, most likely the sun. And then you had the different tribes arranged around, parallel by signs surrounding the tabernacle. This likely does correspond to the order of the zodiac. So Judah, Reuben, Ephraim, and Dan are the middle signs of Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, and Scorpio. This doesn't mean that there were some sort of divination by themselves, but that the representation was familiar, and it helped them to divide up and understand their years, festivals, and identities, kind of like counting to 10 or dividing reading groups into the cardinals and the bluebirds. It was a point of reference. But it's also important to understand that, especially in the most ancient of biblical times, magic and various practices of animism and spiritism were part of the practice of even the most pious individuals. Magic and witchcraft weren't prohibited until the law came into effect. Before that time, there was no systematic specified group worship for the Israelites, and as the people explored the world in which they lived, they were drawn to the natural cycles by which they studied the nature of creation. So this tells us there's nothing wrong with charting natural phenomena, recognizing seasons, seeing God's hand in nature, learning more about creation, even documenting it down, maybe even exploring what God says to us through nature. The problem is when we, as human beings, start using natural things to try and foretell the future, which brings us to the discussion of astrology in the sense of divination. So as we discussed earlier, divination is a method or process by which people attempt to foretell the future in some form or another, and as we can see from the world of astrology, it's a lot more involved than just trying to maybe figure out what kind of decision one should make about something, like having a pressing question when facing a decision and trying to look into the future for the outcome, although there is a form of divination for that. But the idea and concept of divination is bigger than just that immediate thing. It's also about how one sees or perceives themselves within a bigger scheme of things. Things such as birth dates and what sign one is under determines things for people who believe in divination, like personality, interests, ability to get along with others, and personal identity. So, for example, according to different reports, I'm either Sagittarius or the new sign Ophiuchus, which is actually not considered an official sign, which we will talk about that. But now being an overlap kind of makes things interesting. So, if we go by Sagittarius, I should have the following traits. It's a fire sign. The planet is Jupiter. Seers and prophets are born under this sign. Supposed to be adaptable and flexible, honest to the point of tactless, adventurous and rebellious, optimistic to the point of being naive, independent and unreliable, philosophical to the point of being cold. I'm supposed to be into pets, especially horses and dogs, travel, sports, writing, freedom, and flirting. I'm supposed to hate being serious, I'm supposed to hate clinginess, and I'm supposed to have a lack of big ideas. So, what to know about this supposedly new 13th sign? Well, yes, there are some personality traits for it online. Most put it somewhere between Scorpio and Sagittarius. The truth is that Ophiuchus isn't really a thing. Well, it is a thing, but it's not a thing in terms of the zodiac. The rumor about the new zodiac has circulated since at least the 1970s and now resurfaces on social media about once every 6 months or so, but it is actually a hoax. It started online in 2002 through email hoaxes and blog posts. In 2016, NASA published a blog post on its children's site showing where it would fall if astrologers included it, which they did not. The viral Facebook post about it traces back to a Virginia-based radio station. And the theory started with a guy named Stephen Schmidt, who published a book called Astrology 14, in which he argued for 14 zodiac signs rather than 12. He introduced both Ophiuchus between Scorpio and Sagittarius, and Cetus between Aries and Taurus. Based partially on constellations along the ecliptic and partially on the fact that he didn't feel the sun's signs accurately described his or his son's personalities. And nobody agreed with him even to this day. So, what is the truth in the hoax? Because there is some truth. Ophiuchus is a constellation. It's not a new thing. And the appearance of constellations has changed over time. But this is according to astronomy, not astrology. And it doesn't change zodiac signs. The ancients recognized its existence, but because it didn't fit into the constellations' placements and the movement of the sun, they didn't include it. Along with dozens of other constellations, there are 88 constellations in total. Because it's not really a thing, there's conflicting information about the personality of this faux sign. But the constellation is to be a serpent bearer, and it's considered charismatic, happy, a sense of justice, procrastinator, seeker of wisdom and knowledge, open to change, passionate, secretive, funny, honest, intellectual, healers with a vibe to help people grow, has a strong presence, loves life, in touch with spirituality, highly driven, and love adventure. Why do I point all this out? Well, if we're going to use me as the example, I don't fit into either sign entirely. Do I have some of the traits of both? Actually, yes. The interest in philosophy and spirituality and loving animals. I can be pretty honest. I like travel and I like some adventure and I do like riding. But I would definitely not describe myself as being adaptable or anywhere near flexible. I am not optimistic. I'm extremely serious. People talk about me being funny, but I'm not really funny in my everyday life. I'm kind of on the serious side. I hate sports. I love how clingy my significant other is. I can be charismatic sometimes, but not consistently. I hate change. I absolutely do not know how to flirt. I am very reliable and consistent. I don't often procrastinate, and I'm not real secretive. Not to mention, a lot of the traits don't go together. Most of the deeper, more philosophical people I've known, myself included, aren't very optimistic nor naive, nor are people who are really secretive brutally honest, and vice versa. So, a lot of these things just don't really seem to kind of fit together in that vein. What's the answer for the fact that I don't fall into the description of either sign entirely? And they are relatively big traits I don't fall in line with. So if we tried to match me with someone based on my sign, would we match me correctly? Because I don't fall into all the necessary traits of the sign, so how would that work? Also, how can being born under a certain sign dictate someone's personality and life outlook without much else to consider? Like, how does everyone born under that sign all find they are the same? So I do think that that's a fair question, especially given a lot of people probably have some combination of zodiac traits or none at all, but very few probably have all of them. And with that being said, also knowing others who would technically be born under the same sign, I have found some of us are similar, but once again, the combination of things we all have is different. So how do we explain basically where they get it right rather than wrong? If we do the law of averages, there will be some people that it gets nothing right about, some people it gets some things right about, and some people it gets everything right about. And considering the world in which people lived, their judgments and assessments were based on observation, once again, which means people were coming up with ideas and assessing others based on what they saw in them. People's worlds were also quite a bit smaller, with interactions largely restricted to relatives of one form or another. So it's also possible that, maybe the people around them did have things in common because they were all related in some sense, even if they were related distantly. They didn't predict a world by which the whole world would put stock in these ideas and base their days around a few lines printed in a newspaper. The second thing to consider is that the zodiac was part of a greater spiritual understanding. It wasn't an isolated thing that people used as fodder for dates or as something to predict how their day would go. It was part of a bigger cycle, one that looked to multiple forms of divination to predict many life questions and bigger things. As with all things related to divination, sometimes it got it right, sometimes it got it wrong, but because it was part of a bigger cycle, accurate or not, people continued to participate in it. So where does horoscopes fall into this? Now, as part of the divination process involved in the zodiac, the best known of them all is the horoscope. A horoscope is an astrological chart or diagram that represents the position of the sun, moon, planets, astrological aspects, and specified angles of such at a time or an event, such as the time of one's birth. Horoscopes are technically birth charts, things that measure things at the time it represents. It's part of the tradition of horoscopic astrology, a specific form of astrology that uses a visual representation of the skies to interpret what's going on at a specific moment in time. It's part of the tradition of horoscopic astrology, a specific form of astrology that uses a visual representation of the skies to interpret what's going on at a specific moment in time and analyzing the specific symbols mentioned therein. Horoscopic astrology is a newer part of astrology. From what I read, it sounds like it's an extension of Greek astrology, emerging somewhere in the 1st or 2nd century. There are 4 different branches of it: natal astrology, birth charts that determine personality based on birth date, time, and location; mundane astrology, that applies astrology to political and world events; electional astrology, determining the best time to undertake a project, such as starting a business; and hore astrology, the construction of horoscopes for a question that one might have. It is the last one that constructs the idea of a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly horoscope. The horoscope readings, and much of the zodiac interpretations we see online, doesn't date back as far as earlier centuries of humanity. Sun astrology, which determines horoscope readings, is a modified system of Western astrology which is primarily based in horoscopes. It only considers the position of the sun at birth placed within one of 12 zodiac signs, rather than the position of the sun and the other 6 planets, or classical planets as we would say. The moon is the fastest moving of all heavenly bodies, and it's often the main indicator of the daily trends. No one is exactly sure when sun astrology began, but it was popularized somewhere in the 1930s, and as horoscopes first appeared in newspapers in the 17th century, it probably emerged somewhere in between those 2 times, erring more on the side of closer to 1930 because newspapers were more common and there needed to be a system to handle such things. In saying all of this, it's important to state that horoscopes are considered pseudoscientific, meaning they might appear to have some validity at times, but there's no consistent scientific evidence to back up the idea that they prove anything. It's also important to say that horoscopes are based on the interpretations of astrologers, which may or may not agree with one another and may be relevant to interpretation or concept therein. And as a result, and with like most divination methods, there's a considerable amount of ambiguity. Upon reading most horoscopes, they are kind of vague. It's easy to think something applies or possibly means this or that when it's just something vaguely typed up to help you draw your own conclusions. Which brings us to the point of astrology of all sorts that's probably most relevant. There's a component to this that if people believe in it and think it works, then they believe it works, even if the facts don't really line up with the beliefs. I think part of what gets people about horoscopes and the zodiac is that they tend to be partially right some of the time, so that creates enough of an opening to believe it's right all the time. And beyond that, people like to have something to believe in, and the zodiac is alternative enough to seem counter-religious and edgy, a little bit of a rebellious flair with something that still feels meaningful. What do I personally have to say about the zodiac? I'm not going to sit here and argue with people who believe in it, because if you believe in something, you believe in it, and trying to talk anyone out of something like that often doesn't have very good results. I've pretty much through this episode given a lot of reasons why the zodiac isn't reliable and why putting stock and faith in it probably isn't the wisest thing to do. It might be something that's interesting and explores a lot of aspects of skies and seasons and such. I don't feel there's enough to suggest it can tell the future or that it really offers enough to benefit for us from a personality standpoint to justify its use for that either. I believe that the reason why God tells us to stay away from this stuff is about more than just that he doesn't want us to know the future because that somehow isn't trusting in God. I think that's a simplistic answer, and while it's interesting and perhaps there is a point in there, I think it's more than that. I think a large part of it is that God does know the future, and he also knows how inaccurate divination is. And putting our hopes in something like that offers us false hope. Eventually, at some point, it lets us down. And it isn't going to offer us what we need, which is ultimately what happens with any form of religion that is part of or connected to idolatry, which the zodiac is. And while someone might argue the zodiac isn't part of idolatry, it is. It's part of the systematic worship of nature, of the creation, rather than the creator. I'll also say that if we want to know more about the future, about ourselves, about life in general, isn't it better to turn to the Creator, the one who made us, rather than try to decode some sort of message through nature? So yeah, like it or not, we have to do the work of self-discovery and finding our place, and that place isn't answered in the stars. We can read 40 horoscopes and tons of birth charts and find different answers all the time, and that certainly doesn't lead us to a stronger place of self-understanding or of understanding our place in the bigger scheme of things. You know, I wish it was easier to understand who we are and where we're supposed to go than it is. As much as anyone else, I wish there was some sort of simple way to know who we are and who we're supposed to be without so many unknowns and questions. But life doesn't give us many assurances, it gives us choices. And it's a lot harder to face those decisions, whatever they may be, than to try to find answers in a bunch of places that don't offer them. It's the easy way to just kind of jump between things and think you're going to find the answer. But at the same time, wasting time is not productive and it puts off the inevitable longer. So we need to do the hard things and confront the difficult things and face them. So what do I recommend and where do we start? I think being open-minded to possibilities goes a long way. We should open ourselves up to the idea that God has something to say to us in this day and age, and we don't have to do an entire charting or go to the stars to find the answer. We have to open ourselves up to the idea of hearing from God in different ways. Because yes, faith does lead us to different things. It's not all about reading the Bible every day and hoping something jumps off the page. God can speak to us through the Bible. God can speak to us through those ways, but God can also speak to us through other people. We can hear through sense or instinct. Sometimes a complete stranger might give us a word. We might get it at church or through another believer, or we might come to a point where we just know what is for us, and we will be guided into how to handle it. In a bigger sense, though, I believe that we find God's place for us best as we learn more about ourselves. Understanding the good and the bad and embracing both goes a long way in self-realization and esteeming ourselves properly. There's no shortcuts or easy ways around doing this particular task. It's part of life. And be open to change, both within ourselves and our relationship with God. Be open to the journey. Instead of being about the destination and the stopping points on the way, be about the journey itself and where God takes you. I thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast, and I do hope that it has been a blessing to you as well as an educational endeavor. And I recommend, if you would like to do some additional reading on the Zodiac, my book, Understanding Demonology, Spiritual Warfare, Healing, and Deliverance, a manual for the Christian minister. That's Understanding Demonology, Spiritual Warfare, Healing, and Deliverance, a manual for the Christian minister. There's an entire chapter on divination, and we do discuss the Zodiac in it. You can look me up, Dr. Leanne B. Marino, on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold and get your copy today and find something else that might be good for you or for a friend. 35 titles in total. All of them have value, and definitely go out there and get something today. Also, I encourage you to read my blog and Patheos at patheos.com/blogs/leadership on fire. That's patheos.com/blogs/leadership on fire. I do address a variety of different topics on there that affect believers of all sorts. It is geared for leaders, people interested in leadership, or anything that deals with leadership. So there is definitely something on there for everyone. Check me out at Patheos at Leadership on Fire. Also, connect with me around the web. I am available on all of social media at Kingdom Power Now. That's at Kingdom Power Now. I am on Facebook, TikTok, WordPress, Instagram, and beyond. So definitely check me out at Kingdom Power Now. I would love to start a conversation, get feedback, reach out with things that interest you. Also, if you're interested in learning more about the world of counterculture Christianity, feel free to check out my website at kingdompowernow.org. That's kingdompowernow.org. If you are looking for seminary that is completely affordable, can be done from home, and is completely practical and accessible for today, I encourage you to check out Apostolic Covenant Theological Seminary. You can find information about it currently at apostolicuniversity.org, as we are working on our website. And our website is acts176.org. That's acts176.org. Also, if you're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area and you are looking for your family, because family means no one gets left behind, your found family is waiting for you at Sanctuary International Fellowship Tabernacle, better known as Sanctuary. If you'd like to learn more about what we are doing, feel free to visit us at welcomeinthisplace.org. That's welcomeinthisplace.org. And if you cannot find an answer to your question on the website, feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we will be happy to get back to you. And this is Apostle Dr. Leanne Marino reminding you in closing that knowing the Creator is superior to knowing the creation. And make sure that when you study the creation, it leads you to the Creator. Until next time, be blessed. Thank you for joining us on Kingdom Now. I pray it proves to be a blessing in your life. To learn more about this work, ask a question, submit feedback or a topic suggestion, advertise on air, or donate to this work, visit my website, which contains essential information and links for other points of contact around the web at kingdompowernow.org. Also, if you are in our area and would like to visit Sanctuary International Fellowship Tabernacle SIFT, visit welcomeinthisplace.org. Until next time, this is Apostle Dr. Leanne Marino reminding you that the kingdom of God is within you, and that means the kingdom is now.